Good afternoon and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. We're excited to have over 200 registered attendees for today's webinar, which is eligible for 1 credit from the ACI. Let's get started by giving one lucky attendee a Webinar Wednesday lunch bag for answering this trivia question. Today's sponsor, Summit Imaging, is headquartered in Seattle. What is the name of the well-known brick wall covered in used gum located in an alleyway in downtown Seattle? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard. While you're answering, I want to invite everyone to join us for our 6th annual Imaging Conference and Expo, which will be held February the 17th to the 19th, 2019 at the Wyndham Grand Resort Hotel, Clearwater, Tampa, Florida. The ICE conference will bring imaging service professionals from across the nation to Clearwater for 3 days of learning, networking, and the latest advances in imaging. Details can be found at our website, attendice.com. Okay, and let's see who the winner of our Webinar Wednesday lunch bag is. Let's have a look. And it is Jason Leopard. Congratulations, Jason. The correct answer is the gum wall, or also known as the Market Theatre gum wall. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, Summit Imaging. Summit Imaging is an ultrasound parts and transducer repair company that can quickly address specific technical needs based on a foundation of outstanding, rapid customer service. Their philosophy is simple: make their customers heroes. Visit mysummitimaging.com for more information. Our presenters today are Larry Nguyen, CEO and CTO at Summit Imaging, and Carl Grozelle, Manager of Global Education and Training at Summit Imaging. Carl and Larry, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Hey everyone, Larry Nguyen, CEO of Summit Imaging, an ultrasound and mammography equipment support organization.
And Carl Grozelle, I'm the Manager of Training Education with Summit Imaging.
And thank you so much for attending our webinar. Today we just wanted to, contribute to the healthcare community on, what's going on specifically in ultrasound equipment right now, and how low quality remanufactured parts inside these medical devices impact your total cost of ownership. And so, this was really stemming from the findings and the research of us actually, repairing transducers for the past 11 years, where we've seen the gamut of everything from, awesome transducers to transducers that we would find, to be low quality and can impact total cost of ownership. So our large healthcare facilities customers asked us to take this information and share it with everyone, because as a unit and in totality as a market, we can increase patient care and lower total cost of ownership at the same time relative to where we are today.
Yeah, not only that, we were finding in transducers, but components and subcomponents of machines were being found to be replaced with some sort of aftermarket materials as well.
Yeah, significantly impacting performance in the machine, and for clinical engineers in particular, downright near impossible to troubleshoot sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Something as simple as a stick of RAM can really cause a lot of problems in a computer.
Yeah. And so today we actually wanted to begin our conversation about total cost of ownership and what it means to our healthcare facility customers. And the general consensus is we can really bucketize these into 4 large categories. Our webinar is only going to be less than 60 minutes, so we can't go through every single nuance in detail, but we'll kind of do some touch and go on the main points that we're told are critically important. So the 4 variables that we're working with is liability risk. That liability risk is really kind of the unknowns of what could potentially happen with the equipment and with patient care. The other is outsourced service costs. We'll chat about how that can impact total cost of ownership. The replacement part costs, so if something fails inside your ultrasound system or your probe fails, what does that transactional cost look like relative to frequency? And then equipment downtime. I think this is probably one of the heavier topics or heavier variables of total cost of ownership, where it's so costly for healthcare facilities to have that equipment down.
Yeah, it doesn't really have a financial tie to it, but the amount of time that a system could be down really just displaces patience, flow, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just dive into liability risk. So just some examples of liability risk is, if the equipment's low quality and you healthcare facilities are expecting high quality equipment, here's some risks that we were told that are unnecessarily being assumed by healthcare facilities. Misdiagnosis. For example, if there's a big dropout sector of a transducer and it's hiding what could be, the issue behind that, you're never able to see those kinds of, issues that the patient's counting on us being able to see.
Yeah, misdiagnosis, there's issues like refraction, maybe something's even missing entirely. That the image is just not clear enough to make a proper diagnosis, and the patient might have to be brought back, or that's not caught at all.
Yeah, and I think the high risk items are, really the small part scanning, to where, a drop in, kind of an abdominal study is something that a sonographer could work around. But when you start getting those really fine and small images and the small calculations and measurements, that the missing data could actually extraordinarily overwhelm whatever little data you're working with in the first place.
Well, and that image quality really plays into something like a biopsy as well.
Yeah,
If you're not accurately aiming a biopsy needle and you're actually missing your target, that goes into that patient injury category that comes up next, and you're doing maybe some undue stress or having to repeat the procedure over again.
Yeah, and when we're talking about patient injury, from our customers, they're telling us that T-probes is a big one. The T-probe where they're repaired properly and they're properly insulated from the patient, and there's so many different moving parts in these TE transducers that very complex, very sophisticated, but because it's intercavity and it's going down the esophagus during a scan, that the electronics and how they're insulated and preventing current leak is extraordinarily important to protect the patient, because they already have a heart condition of some sort. That's why we're scanning the heart, right? And then to have any current leak going into probably the most one of the most sensitive parts of the body is risky.
Well, that and you start opening up whole new avenues of infection. Even cleaning solution has been introduced to the patient before via a hole or a gap in some sort of seal or rubber on the transducer.
Absolutely, absolutely. And other things around kind of more of the ultrasound system itself. Onboard diagnostics is a big hot topic right now, and getting access to those to diagnose or to do other methods that may or may not be correct. Those are things that healthcare facilities should be aware of, because when you kind of take a look at how these machines are serviced, if the IP laws aren't respected, copyright isn't respected, and license agreements that obviously are signed when the machines are procured, all of these things, whether the healthcare facility does it themselves or finds that an outsourced service organization comes in and is not properly accessing the critical information to install parts or to pull error codes and whatnot, the healthcare facility, you guys, you're actually liable for that. So we highly recommend that you ask the right questions on really understanding how these diagnostics are being accessed, and that if it's right or not.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of tools that are built in the system, but they're locked down, or they're for OEM use only, and everyone thinks you can get in, but sometimes it's actually a code from a long time ago, or you just don't have the access, and it's been written into the agreement.
Yeah, and there's also some precedents in the market that that's not okay. Yep. And from us, we're technologists first, and we build code and we build software here. These are really important to respect, because there's so much time and energy and research and development and talent and resources to build this kind of software, and I think it's something that we as a market really should respect, because this is the things that make these medical devices so great and gives us such great healthcare.
Yeah, software really is the key, and if you have good software, you have a good system.
Absolutely, absolutely. So moving on, we're going to talk about outsourced service costs and how that relates to total cost of ownership. And what we're finding, an overwhelming amount of our customers are saying that bringing that clinical engineering in-house is the key. And we're hearing some pretty large numbers, anywhere from 40 to 75% savings of actually building a clinical engineering team and department at these healthcare facility networks,
Yeah.
and just getting the right training out there and getting the right talent and actually doing all the service themselves. So Kyle, tell us more about that, because that's who you're training.
It's actually shocking that I find most of the time these engineers were already working there too, and they were being brought on for what you call like a first look, and after that you have to call in a service engineer or call in a third-party company just because a little bit of skill wasn't there to do some diagnostics. So we really go into that applicable diagnostics training here at Summit. We want to teach how to actually diagnose and order the right items to repair your system like the first time, instead of calling an OEM or calling another third party and kind of thinking about it for a couple days and having someone arrive in a van just to tell you exactly what you could have figured out 5 minutes in front of the machine. So we're trying to empower those clinical engineers that are already in-house to do more, but then that team starts to grow and they gain more responsibility and become just more of a powerhouse in the hospital to keep things up.
Yeah, I think there's two critical points here. I think that what we are executing on the requests of our customers is that you healthcare facilities, many of you already have clinical engineering teams. You don't need us to come out with a van to come service your equipment, because if you can leverage the team you already have, then you're really not double paying for the service or the labor to take care of the equipment. So there's an opportunity to absolutely eliminate outsourced service costs altogether there. But number two, the clinical engineering departments in these healthcare networks, they're already there. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about downtime, but if they're right there and they can diagnose immediately and then get the part for the next morning delivery, your downtime is a matter of business hours rather than waiting to schedule and work with administrative layers in your own hospital network, and then the outsourced service administrative layer, and then on top of that, then you wait for the engineer to find out the scheduling, and it just takes a long time. So we found that just a real robust remote support model like our tech support is really helpful to healthcare facilities.
Yeah, it's amazing. Kind of comparing our technical support team to how other people like to do it. We want to stay on the phone. We want to help 5 people at a time and have, a couple of phone calls that we might be ready to make. And we're always, trying to be responsive. And we use online tools to respond to people. We use text message if they want it. We'll FaceTime or Skype them if they need help finding out where some cable's going. And that's really the key of it too. Is if the knowledge isn't there with that person in their mind at the moment, they know that they have the connection to get it. Whether it be like our YouTubes, an app, using Skype, FaceTime, text message, all of it. And then having the ability to not only install the hardware, but do the software installation as well. Do the step-by-step to get the system fully running. And not just hot-swapping things and then waiting for some diagnostic errors to pop up just because you changed out a card.
Absolutely. So there's lots of methods on how we help healthcare facilities, and it's really been generated by their requests. It's they need these certain pictures. How do you do this through a video and all of these things? So I think we're just fortunate to be able to leverage those communication techniques and get them out there to help as many people as we can. So the next variable we're going to talk about is replacement part cost. And as we dive in, it's going to talk about warranty DOA rates and the terms of those warranty DOA rates. So as we talk about that, warranty and DOA rates are a little bit different. Warranty being a failure of a piece of equipment within a certain duration of time backed by an organization. At Summit, we're 6 months standard with all of our warranties. But when you compare warranty rates, one has to also compare the terms. So, a 2.5% warranty rate, for example, for anybody at 90 days, is much different than somebody's warranty rate at 2.5% at 2 years. Because just the duration of time that we are really comparing apples to oranges, you kind of got to propagate the 2.5% of 90 days out to a 2-year equivalency, or drawing that 2-year equivalency back into 90 days. So those are really important to assess because that mitigates a lot of your risk. That is a worst case scenario. And in our webinar today, we really want to talk about how to get the best of that from your suppliers and what to look for, because you can warranty something all day long, but if you're warranting something every month, then that's a problem because there's so much downtime, and the cost associated with deploying another engineer all the time is just significant and just outweighs the replacement part cost value altogether.
Well, and sometimes that replacement part isn't readily available, so you start chasing maybe a white rabbit, thinking it's not your part you just replaced a month ago, but it's actually something else, and you circle back 2 weeks later after the system's been down and find out it's actually a part that was DOA, dead on arrival, or it was this warranty part that failed within a month, but you're not able to actually weigh that out. And that really plays into that frequency of failure. If you have a 6-month warranty, and everyone knows that kind of like used cars trick, after a year old, on month 13 is when you have a problem, right? So is that frequency of failure occurring in the warranty period, or is it right after it?
Yep, absolutely. But then, just I think for us, we're most empathetic to the clinical engineers, and that's where I started. It was kind of being deployed from hospital to hospital on helping on getting these ultrasound machines and probes up. And Kyle, you spent a lot of time doing that as well.
A lot of time.
And when you're an engineer and you get a part that you're questioning its quality, it's really hard because for example, if it's a power supply and you think it's a power supply, and tech support, we think it's a power supply, and if you don't have confidence in that power supply getting to you and knowing that it should work, and you put in a power supply and either you have the same problem after you put it in, or it's a different problem altogether, with no confidence in the quality of that part, you don't know if it's the part is DOA or if there's something else wrong that we should be chasing as a failure in the system.
You just start spinning your tires in the mud. You don't want to move on to start chasing that diagnosis because you think you might just be in the same spot.
Yes, absolutely. And then at the end of the day, you might have a myriad of parts, and you just don't know which one to use and which one not to use. So you end up spending more time and burning more time just trying to put a myriad of parts in and then starting to pull them out to make sure that you're getting the proper credits on the ones you don't need.
Yeah, this is almost like the blessing and the curse of a hero kit, when people like to get multiple parts and things like that. And you might end up start chasing things around, but then you're not sure what you're pulling out and putting back in, and it turns into a long day of paperwork too.
It is a long day of paperwork, but sometimes it's absolutely necessary. Sometimes the machines throw certain errors, and it's really just a general error, and you kind of triangulate with some symptoms in there, and you can get there. But it's really important to have confidence that the parts and medical devices that you're getting were tested before they're shipped to you, because that gives the engineer confidence to say, hey, if this didn't solve the problem, then I can move on to the next item instead of questioning the first step, because when you question that first step, that's an extra day of downtime. Right. And so we'll talk about that in a minute, but that downtime is really critical. And the last item for replacement part costs is ensuring that you're getting a holistic assembly, if it's an assembly, reflected by the part number. Where there's a lot of times where a part number actually represents an assembly of parts that, for example, a computer, right? There's video cards, there's processors, there's RAM, there's hard drive, there's all these things in it that, as healthcare facilities, to make your service of your own equipment a lot quicker, just ensuring that it is the holistic assembly and not just kind of a shell that you kind of see. I mean, it's tell us some about the things that you've seen.
I think one of the biggest ones is video cards. Ship a whole computer, but please move over your video cards from your old one. Or other times, there would be hard drives missing. And hard drives might have actually been part of the critical failure of the software on the system. So you had a computer failing, but hard drives have a finite life to them. And if you're replacing your computer and you move over old hard drives, you're just putting the ticking clock right
the
back
only
in.
the one problem of the computer is transferring
Yeah.
that to the new computer. So
Yeah.
you know, those are things to look out for in replacement parts, and you know, kind of the costs associated with them is that, you know, making
Yeah.
sure it's a holistic assembly and not just you know, a kind of piecemealing on what happens to be on the shop floor.
Yep.
That's not really how it should be, because the part number that you're ordering at a healthcare facility, if it is a computer assembly, you should expect the whole computer assembly,
Yeah.
and not just pieces of it and then transferring others in. I mean, if that's really the case, then maybe that should be disclosed up front.
Discounted for even.
Yeah, I mean, there should even be a discount on that, and it's
Yeah.
just you're not getting the whole product, so you should be paying the whole product price.
I think one other point that comes up often too, when we say completely represented part numbers, is compatibility.
Yeah.
Sometimes compatibility is assumed rather than guaranteed. Just because it's the same part number, maybe there's actually a different bracket to it. This is very true with monitors, where the monitor plastic itself doesn't fit just because it's a different series. So it's a -A instead of a -B or something.
Yep.
And that can lead to, you know, a couple hours downtime to a whole nother day.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you know, that kind of rolls into equipment downtime, and I think the most critical piece here is you know, this in itself, and you know, kind of a close second is that liability risk. But you know, when equipment's down, you can't care for patients. I mean, there's no way around it.
It's a rippling effect. I think equipment downtime, not only does it, you know, it's patient care at the core, but you're also having a sonographer who no longer has a job to do that day because there's only one room open. There's now 2 other patients that are backed up in the hallway. It just keeps going and going, and to the point where,
Yeah, or even if the machine goes down, they have to cancel all of the patients
Yeah.
for the day and bring them all back, and then trying to fit them in wherever the schedule is. And you know, it's really a cascading effect that has no benefit at all. So.
And in a situation where it's competitive, you might even lose that opportunity for imaging a patient to another facility, where you kind of start talking about revenue generation as being lost.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have instances where machines can be down for a week, and imagine a week's worth of patients just disappearing. It'd be very critical.
Yeah, and so the opportunity cost of revenue generation is enormous. You know, we're seeing, you know, kind of looking at the replacement cost price, and then you kind of look at the frequency of the failures that we were talking about before. But, you know, I think what far outweighs any of the costs associated with the replacement part for ultrasound equipment in particular is this opportunity cost of a downtime of revenue generation that could be occurring, because you know, we know that you know the hourly rate of ultrasounds can vary, but we know that they're of a value that far exceeds the discrepancy in what a low quality medical device part may be relative to a high quality medical device. So it makes it really nominal of the price of the parts at that point.
Yeah, well, we even talk about clinical engineering costs, and you know, echoing off what we said earlier, the clinical engineers in-house should be empowered to work on these machines. But if they're revisiting it over and over again because another part has gone onto warranty again, you know, we're circling back that all these things kind of complement each other, and your clinical engineering cost goes up just because they're repeating the same steps over and over.
Absolutely, it's just spinning wheels, and it's frustrating too. I mean, you know, we're techs at heart, and you know, we love fixing things, and the most frustrating thing as a tech is that you think you fixed it, and then it comes back. Then you think you fixed it, and then you got to go back, and then you think you fixed it, and then you go back, and it's frustrating, and you know, a lot of that frustration can be eliminated just with quality parts.
Yeah, information and quality parts. It's, you know, once you know the critical components of what was causing the failure too, and being able to address that right away.
Yeah. So in addition to the clinical engineer kind of going back frequently because of low quality parts used in medical devices, you know, it also taxes the administration because you have to go procure or claim that warranty again, you know, through the healthcare facilities, you know, quality department, and then if it's happening too often, then healthcare facilities will then deploy their quality engineer to go audit the
Yep.
supplier because it's just not working out well, and then that costs. And
Mhm.
it's just just by starting out and doing it correctly and getting the right quality parts in there the first time,
Yep.
just mitigates so many of these issues that have that, what you're calling that rippling effect. And
Oh.
and it also, every time the frequency occurs, and clinical engineers, yeah, I know you know this. The first time that a problem occurs, it's okay, and
Yep.
but then it happens again. The amplitude and the intensity and the anger of the user gets a little bit higher, and then
Yep.
then when it happens a third time, it gets even higher, right? And
Yep.
so the intensity just is more of a geometric growth than a linear growth with the end users. So that's
You almost end up with a unnecessary capital cost
yep.
because you're not nailing your regular maintenance. You end up having to replace the machine because you think it's cursed.
Yes,
Right?
we've seen that many times
And
where just end users get so frustrated because of low quality parts unknowingly, right, being put into these ultrasound systems. They just end up just saying, you know what, I'm done with this. Just get rid of this thing. Give me something different altogether. And it's sometimes it comes to that, but it's definitely avoidable.
Yeah, yeah. It's downtime is one of the things that we strive to lower here at Summit using our technical support. Our probe repair process is always just squishing time as much as possible, and that's what led us to create the Adepto software that we use every day with our technicians on the phone.
Absolutely.
Because you can walk up to a machine and get that diagnosis right away, but you're confident that you know what to order next, and you're done.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really a first pass at this total cost of ownership, and what our customers are deeming as the most critical factors when they're looking at this from a healthcare facilities optic. And we're going to roll into what are the things that we're seeing as examples that really impact these four variables. And the things that we're going to show you today aren't everything. We only have a finite amount of time, but we do have a lot more of these, quality issues and how to look for quality on our YouTube channel. So we're going to roll into the first topic here. Is some low quality and, in our opinion here, improperly remanufactured parts that are inside the ultrasound systems themselves. So one of the things that we're finding in defective cores coming back to us, and we're repairing them for our inventory, and we redeploy them out to the healthcare facilities, or healthcare facilities even saying, "Hey, can you repair this for us?" We're finding a lot of low quality remanufactured parts in the inside of these, either PCBs themselves or inside of assemblies. And I think the particular one here is about video cards, right?
Yeah, we talked about video cards pretty extensively because we had the situation where these ones were keeping a whole system down just from one video card. And in particular, they would work on an IE22, but not on a 33 that required an extra screen. So they were kind of getting under the radar that way. And they were very easily identifiable. They had different heat sinks. They had just so many things that were wrong with them, but we found a lot of them.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of couch that, they're really easy identifiable to us because we've seen thousands of these things, and we know what should be in there, and we keep track of what are in these assemblies and what these video cards should be. And I think with the talented technicians that we have here, we're able to identify some call them bootleg, fraudulent, remanufactured, another polite way of putting it, but it's absolutely wrong to be in there. And this, what we wanted to share with you is one of the videos on our YouTube channel that actually kind of describes, this activity. So, yeah. Hi everyone, Larry Nguyen here with Summit Imaging, an ultrasound and mammography equipment support organization. And today we wanted to talk about ultrasound replacement parts, and in particular about ultrasound replacement parts that we're seeing a startling number of remanufactured or knockoff PCBs that are being used in equipment being deployed to healthcare facilities like you. And in particular today, we're going to talk about video cards And the video cards we're going to talk about today are actually running in the Philips IU22 and IE33 platforms that are great pieces of imaging technology. And these kinds of repairs and remanufacturing that are really low quality is just really unfair to the healthcare facilities that are relying on ultrasound suppliers to help them keep their equipment up and lower the total cost of ownership. The problem is that you have a great piece of equipment like this, an OEM video card that does a lot of processing, are being replaced with knockoff video cards. And obviously they're a different color, but there's a few different problems with this. Number one, this remanufactured card only performs to 60% of the performance of the OEM card. A significant difference and obviously a very low performance relative to the OEM card. The other is traceability, and while somebody took the time to remanufacture this video card to trick the ultrasound machines into functioning, the serial numbers and part numbers are actually identical between all of these remanufactured cards. So there is no unique identifier any longer of these cards that aren't being disclosed to you when you're procuring these cards themselves, or maybe the computers that go in. So that's all we want to talk about today, is that these low quality remanufactured parts that are inside of replacement parts now. We see it in transducers a lot, but now we're seeing it in the parts, and we just wanted to educate and make the community aware that this is something you should be asking your suppliers if these are indeed inside the replacement parts that you're procuring to bring your systems back up. And today we hope you really enjoyed the education to make you aware of these video cards. So thank you so much for taking the time. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook. And until next time, thanks. So it's incredible, the links and how low quality some of these parts can get. And I think in this particular case, you and I have both experienced these video cards that only perform to 60% of the original. I just want to take a moment here. Can you describe how big of a gap that is? Because these have polynomial processors in these, and they are doing, we can't even count how many calculations per second.
The weirdest way to explain it, probably the best way, is trying to watch a VHS on your 4K TV these days.
Fair. Yeah.
It's just, you're going to have banding, blocking issues. The thing is, it's going to keep producing an image. It's just going to keep producing a pretty bad one.
Yeah, but then once it's introduced with those different modalities, and it gets taxed a little bit harder, where the system is actually expecting it to push its frequency if it's processing beyond that 60% mark of the OEM card, right, which exceeds the performance of the low-quality remanufactured video card, the system throws some really weird errors.
Yeah, when they always point to software errors. We'll have some odd hardware errors that aren't even related to imaging. You'll have computer failure, and it's like a wild goose chase.
And it's awkward lockups too, because what happens is, because it's not performing at the processor's not performing at the frequency that the software is expecting, it locks everything up, and everything gets off timing. And when everything's off timing, the normal processors of the computer itself keep pushing forward, and then the polynomial processor on the video card can never catch up. So when the gap gets so big, the machine just locks up, or it crashes altogether. And on these lockups and these crashes, there is no error code, because the machine didn't have time to say, oh, there's a problem. No, it just, boom, the timing's off, and then we're just done at this point.
Well, and you'd think something like a video card doesn't expose a lot of risk to the patient, but if we talk about things like timing, maybe that system goes down and actually loses all of that patient information, loses that study you just completed, and now your patient either has to stay in the room, or they're already going down the hall.
Or they're rescheduled to come back because the machine's down now. So, kind of talking about this total cost of ownership formula, the liability risk is, it's, not so high here. It's just a hard down. You're not able to see the patient. Outsourced service costs could potentially go significantly up. because in these kinds of situations, it's really hard to identify these video cards from a clinical engineer standpoint because their job's so hard. They work on so many different kinds of equipment outside of ultrasound that, and then especially you kind of look at the generation of machines and then each cart level of the machines and the different configurations, whether it's cardiac, women's health or general. There's different nuances to all of them, even though all the machines look the same.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, if they look the same, they're all operating different. The OS has different requirements of the hardware. And I think one of the biggest things that really upsets me about these cards is they all have the same serial number.
Yeah.
That's not...
They have the exact same serial number on every single one of these green cards. You go on to
a couple thousand of them.
It's really bad, and how it impacts replacement part costs. You're forced to, if you didn't know, you keep buying the same card over and over again, thinking it's fine, and
it was a good deal.
It was a good deal. And then what's most important here is that equipment downtime. It just prolongs the equipment downtime. The end users start losing trust in the engineer unnecessarily because the card was bad the entire time. From its inception of being remanufactured, it was never good in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
So moving on to the next item is, talking specifically still about ultrasound, is poorly repaired transducers. And this is really important because the repair's got to be of high quality, and this kind of is reflected on the training that's instilled on the technicians, and with poorly repaired transducers, they can start causing some awkward and some severe image quality issues that could impact part of your total cost of ownership.
Oh, exactly. Not only are you going to have some image quality issues, but some of these poorly repaired transducers will just become one-time use after that. They're filled with something like a liquid nails, or they're sealed up to the point where you can't even try to fix it again.
Yeah.
So it's a complete loss.
Yeah. So let's just jump into this YouTube video that is an example of. Hey everyone, Larry Nguyen with Summit Imaging here, an ultrasound and mammography equipment support organization. And today's topic for our quality tip is talking about a section of remanufactured cable assemblies and comparing that to the OEM cable assemblies. And so we're going to start off the conversation with what is an OEM cable assembly. Well, here's an example of one. There's several versions, but these are specifically designed to give a great image and have a certain level of flex and durability that actually allows the transducers to last. There's a lot of R&D that goes into these things, and we really appreciate what resources have been put there to be able to bring us cutting edge image quality for ultrasound. Unfortunately, in today's market, there's a lot of ultrasound repair organizations that are choosing to remanufacture the entire cable assembly. The cable assembly includes the entire cable itself, the strain relief, and then and most importantly, the lines on the inside. And today, we're going to talk about the lines on the inside. And this is an example. And as we zoom in, you can see that these lines are not near the quality of the OEM lines. And we can tell by the amount of significant damage that we're finding inside of these transducers as we open them up to see that whenever there is damage occurring, it's a myriad of damage rather than just one or two points of damage. And in this particular case, you can see about 30 lines that are just completely frayed or chafed. And that's because the insulation of these lines just aren't up to the quality of the OEM lines. So, when we're going to talk about these remanufactured cables, many will claim that they are to match OEM spec, and that's really hard to believe because the OEMs don't release their specs. And so it's impossible for an outside organization of the OEM to manufacture, in this case remanufacture equipment to those specs, because it's a complete guess. There's electrical specs, there's longevity specs, there's durability tests, all of these things that if they don't know, it's impossible to manufacture to those exacting specifications that are unknown. And so we just want to bring that to your awareness today and educating the healthcare facilities on what's kind of going on in these transducers. You don't know what's going on because it's inside the transducer. You have to actually literally open them up to find out what's on the inside. And with Summit Imaging, we're only using the OEM parts and components to repair these transducers for these critical pieces that impact performance and safety of the transducer. And if you need any help, our technical support team is available all the time, and their information is available here. And if you enjoyed what you saw, we have a lot more videos coming. We're really excited about our channel. Please subscribe here. And thank you so much for taking the time. Talk to you next time. So, we're kind of talking just about, remanufactured lines, and we're going to show more of a different case on the next slide. But, these remanufactured lines that we're seeing, they're just not of the quality of the OEMs. We're seeing the frequency of failure get higher.
Yeah, I think it was very clear, and just in that image, right about halfway through, when you see all those, we call them the rainbow lines, and there's breaking apart in the middle of the frame, because the minute they start flexing, they start snapping, and the OEM lines actually have pretty good resilience. They last a long time.
Yeah, they've done a great job. And that's why it's so important. It's just to use these OEM parts and donor parts from other OEM transducers to make these repairs, because the remanufactured lines that we are seeing inside of these transducers, they're just they don't have the flexibility nor the quality of the insulation of the lines, or the correct, sometimes the impedance is off and doesn't carry the signal as well as the OEM lines. And we've actually had some experience and some studies with Carolyn Coughlin, our sonographer professor that trains every single one of our technicians and every single employee at Summit for image quality, and why it's so important, because we have more of those videos coming on our YouTube channel soon, but it really dives deep into why these things that may seem like a non-issue to the casual observer, to a sonographer who's actually using the equipment, or an ultrasound technician, it's critical, because they're trying to help patient right there, and if they can't see something, or if they're seeing something that looks like an anomaly, it could be easily mistaken for something else, and could cause some misdiagnosis.
Yeah, it was really shocking going through the training with Carolyn, learning like one of the big issues with being able to identify something in the image is just being blocked, losing information as it goes down. And then you take those lines and you just bend it a little bit, and chattering fills up the image, and it's gone.
Yeah, and it's just in some parts of the human anatomy, there's supposed to be blood, and then you don't see blood anymore, right? Or blood flow. And then in some parts of the anatomy, there's not supposed to be blood, and all of a sudden you have what it looks like blood flow. And so it's just this really important factor that I think is commonly overlooked during image quality, that you have to have the ultrasound machine there to test the transducer properly prior to shipment to the healthcare facilities, because you got to ensure these things are working for them.
Yeah, one of the other things that really got me when I was out in the field often is how often as sonographers just, I hold it this way to make sure it works fine. That shouldn't be the case. The transducer should work all the time, and they're maybe hanging it from the system or moving it around a certain way. They know that that's where the issue is, and they're just kind of living with it. But that might be affecting patient care. They're not able to do that study as fast.
Yeah, or the other one we hear is like, oh, it's so hard to get an image, and they're sitting there trying to scan and trying to do a phantom scan or scanning a patient. Like, oh, it's so hard to get an image. It impacts their throughput too. So they actually slow down because the equipment's not responding in the way that it should be responding. So how does that impact TCO? Obviously, liability risk, we just discussed that. Outsourced service costs, not so much an issue on probes, because those are really kind of more of a deploy and repair and return, or you get a replacement. Replacement part costs, really important here. The frequency of failure could be significantly higher than that of high quality OEM parts being used for repairs. And then that warranty and DOA, not only the metrics of those rates, but the duration of term is really important to compare as well. So,
well, and once those non-OEM lines are in the transducer and they fail, the rest of that transducer now either needs to be replaced or it's scrapped.
And then the frequency just rolls right into equipment downtime. You know, I think in this imaging modality, you know, you can go to the next room, sometimes just borrow a curve probe or a linear probe if one goes down. But you know, sometimes that's just not the case. You know, with TEE probes, there's typically not extras of those laying around.
No.
And so the
Luckily hospital.
downtime of one of those exams is quite significant. And
Yep.
you know, those are the kinds of things that, you know, we just want to bring awareness to, is that, you know, this equipment downtime and that opportunity cost is so significant for healthcare facilities and patient care that, you know, it's something that was a resounding, you know, agreement with all of our healthcare facilities that we work with, that is the problem, is equipment downtime.
Yeah.
And so the last one is about hiding low quality remanufactured parts inside of transducers in basically their entirety. So we wanted to introduce this video to you to better explain on what's going on, and then after that we're going to roll into what are the things you should be looking for to avoid these kinds of low quality remanufactured parts in your ultrasound transducers.
Hey everyone, Larry Nguyen with Summit Imaging, an ultrasound and mammography equipment support organization. And today we want to talk about remanufactured probes in their entirety and what's going on in the industry that you, healthcare facilities, really need to be aware of. And so if we kind of paint the market outside of North America, there's a lot of remanufactured transducers in their entirety that are coming in to the North American market and actually being deployed in really deceiving ways that you would never know about, because you're not in the equipment, you're not cutting them open and working on it like we are to fully understand the improperly remanufactured parts that are actually being hidden inside of these transducers or within repairs that you are receiving. So today we want to demonstrate how quickly you know, this activity can occur to get you these transducers and to make you aware of you know, the improper parts that may be in something that does look like an original equipment manufactured transducer. So on this side of the table, this is a fully remanufactured transducer, and on this side table is a completely OEM transducer. Let's assume this remanufactured transducer is quote unquote fully working, and then this is a defective core or something that a healthcare facility has tossed out and an ultrasound supplier got their hands on it and has some of the OEM components that they would find useful for this kind of activity. And so what's happening to this probe is we would actually take this apart. The body would come off, and these probes have been prepped by our technicians to make this quick. We would open up the can, and then we would pull out the lines. The reason why the can and the body of these transducers are critical is that they carry the serial number that the OEMs originally deploy for traceability purposes. As you can see, these remanufactured lines are extraordinarily difficult to work with and are obviously not OEM spec. So these are the components that typically a supplier would want to get rid of. And now this is the defective OEM transducer, and same activity. We're going to take off the body, open up the can, and pull out the lines. As you can see, these are much easier to come out because the OEM lines have a lot more flexibility and they last a lot longer because they allow for that movement. And so now we have the OEM transducer here. On this side, the remanufactured transducer, and let's just say this piece right here is what is coming from overseas. So this OEM crystal, OEM cable assembly will be discarded. And we'll just leave it here for right now. What's most important is the C51 labeling labeling of C51, part number, serial number. Now watch how it goes back together. Remanufactured crystal inside the body. Remanufactured lines going inside the can. We would connect the can to the lines on the inside, but typically after that's done, the probe goes back together. And no screws, but you kind of get the point. You have OEM markings, OEM part number, OEM serial number with completely remanufactured everything on the inside, which is the most critical part of the probe. When it comes to imaging, image quality, longevity, functionality, safety, performance, it all relies on the equipment that we just transferred from the completely remanufactured transducer to the OEM marked components on the outside. So what's happening here is that this is occurring in pieces, or it's an entirety like we showed you today, and you need to be aware and ask the questions and vet your ultrasound suppliers that this isn't occurring in any of your replacement or repaired transducers that you are getting from the ultrasound suppliers in our market. At Summit Imaging, we are actually designed to look for these improperly remanufactured components and notify our customers and allow them to make the decision, which they always say, throw it in the garbage. That's not okay to use inside the equipment. And for us, brings up a lot of ethical issues that are occurring in the market. There's no 510Ks, there's no safety measures, there's no performance measures that validate that these parts can be used the way that they're being sold to you or repaired for you. And I want to be clear that the offshore remanufacturers of what we are seeing as low quality parts that are going in these probes are marketing them as OEM compatible. They're not claiming they're OEM probes, but the suppliers in North America that are doing this practice are not disclosing that the parts being transferred into your transducers are improperly remanufactured parts, and they've never been validated. There's no 510Ks, so there is no proof that they have the performance and safety that the OEM components have inside of these really critical transducers. So we hope you learned a lot today. It is our objective is to educate and make aware to the healthcare community on what's going on inside of this equipment that you would never see the inside of, and we hope you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on LinkedIn, like us on Facebook, and talk to you next time. Bye.
So pretty astonishing that that things are getting to that level of intensity to be able to provide a quote unquote repaired transducer or a transducer replacement to healthcare facilities, because that's just not right.
No, it was really shocking to me. It was I was dumbfounded when I found these on the market down in a trade show a couple of years ago, and just how open it is across the world, and then they're brought into the United States and moved around and swapped into components, and it just leads to a lot of available kind of weird transducers in the market, whether it be a single component that's been replaced or the whole thing.
Yeah, and what's really alarming is that there's no equivalency tests, even if there is one, right? Because there's no OEM specs released on these things, so there is no proving of equivalency because there's performance measures, safety measures, dimensional measures. We even had some probes where they're completely remanufactured and they to the casual observer, they look like a normal transducer, but the second you
Yeah.
try to put a biopsy guide on it, it won't fit.
It won't fit.
Yeah, it just, that's not right, because
Mhm.
the part numbers and the models that are being requested by healthcare facilities, they're expecting that, and they're expecting all of the functionality and response and performance and safety that the part number or the model number on that purchase order represents.
Well, yeah, and I found one of the biggest arguments that still exists for these things. Oh, the signal strength is exactly the same, but it's not just signal strength. It's, is the unit operating at the same temperature? What's the longevity? What is the patient exposure?
What are the materials?
Yeah,
They don't know what the materials are. Or is it is it RoHS certified? Is it leaded solder? Is it lead-free solder?
Yep.
Is it we can look at, there's so many different variables and dimensions that it's almost impossible to guess it perfectly to make sure. But I think what's also really interesting is that nobody's really taking the time to validate these really low quality manufactured parts. And it's correct me if I'm wrong, it is legally a burden upon the organization that's performing these swaps or remanufacturing these parts and then putting them in the transducers. It's their responsibility to actually go through a process to validate those. And the most common way of doing that is a 510K.
Yeah, there should be basically a full manufacturer's equivalency submitted to the FDA. To say this, part has been swapped, these things have been changed, but they match the exact same.
Yeah.
And that they've been tested with these such tests to relate to that. And I have never seen a 510K for a whole probe swap. Or,
me neither. Obviously, we just looked it up just to make sure. But yeah, as of today, then when we shot this video, there is none.
Yeah.
And it makes us angry because our customers are angry. When they come to us and they're saying, "Hey, this is what's going on," and we do our investigation of what's wrong with the transducer, and it's a hard conversation because they feel like they've been deceived, and deceived in a way that's they're at least to be notified that this does have remanufactured parts and components inside that aren't validated. They were never given the opportunity to say no.
So we've been in hospitals where an OR is going through a T-probe study maybe 3-4 times a day, and they only have an hour to turn the transducer to get it back upstairs to be reused because they only have one T-probe. A little bit of Sidex, a little OBA getting into something in that non-OEM transducer, that transducer's been repaired with components that just are subpar, destroys it right away. But then on top of that, now that transducer is completely unrepairable. It is now a capital cost because transducers are not
good
cheap.
point. You paid for a repair. It was a bad repair, or you paid for a probe. It was a bad probe. You have to buy it again.
It's a full exchange at that point.
And hopefully, there was some sort of organization there to say, hey, that was actually a bad probe to begin with. That's why it failed. Go somewhere else.
Just keep going back.
So I think there's a lack of awareness there because it's hard for healthcare facilities to know because you have to open up the probes and fix a whole bunch of them to really understand what's on the inside, and keep proper data logs of what are all the proper components, and to be able to recognize that these aren't the right items.
And I think at this situation, it's a victim of time. You have a hospital that needs a transducer within the next couple days in order to go back to regular operating room pace. So of course they're going to want the fastest repair and the exchange that's available right away, and it's not always the best product that's being delivered to their doorstep.
Yeah. So if we're talking about TCO here, I mean, liability risk is through the roof. It's just not the right piece of equipment at all. It's hiding and acting like it wants to be the right equipment, but obviously it's not through that video. Outsourced service costs, not really an issue here. Replacement part costs, frequency of replacements definitely going to go up. And then equipment downtime, just the other big elephant in the room here is that if more failures, then it's more downtime, and depending on the type of scan, it can be significant.
Well, and then you have administrative costs, chasing this quality.
Absolutely.
We've had situations where the executives at the hospital refused to replace the transducer until a full investigation had occurred, and that's just putting patient time further and further down the road. But hopefully after they finish that quality inspection, they come up with some good transducers in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think the next natural question that healthcare facilities ask us is, how do you avoid these low-quality medical devices? And this is a really tough question because you really have to address the supplier in many different angles because your needs are so different at every single facility, every single site, every single kind of organization that we're supporting, and we're just kind of trying to tease out some of the themes and some of the patterns, and prioritizing based on the requirements of these healthcare facilities. And the first one is ISO 1345, right?
It's been pretty universally accepted as the strong standard to go by.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is what the largest healthcare equipment manufacturers in the world use, and we've decided to adopt this a few years ago, and 1345 is really critical because that's actually a quality management system specifically designed for medical devices. And so not all 1345 QMSs are created the same. Scope is a big deal, right?
Yeah. It is, because a lot of things could kind of be just left off the table. So you have components of the work being done that are 1345 certified, the QMS around them, but then not that part though.
And so the scope of the QMS is really important because to claim 1345 is absolutely wonderful, and we believe should be a requirement of any organization that's repairing or selling any type of medical device. It really should be the standard. But in addition to that, scope is really important. So for Summit Imaging, our scope is all ultrasound equipment, so parts and transducers, and all digital flat panels. We're starting in the Hologic Selenias and quickly expanding from there. But our QMS actually calls into that it is incorporating all of these items. So there are some QMSs at 1345 that are just brokering QMSs, to where they're just kind of bringing in and moving out equipment, and that's it's a way to apply it, but in its most holistic form, based on the international standards, is really for medical device manufacturing and repair of these.
Yeah, that's one thing. We actually have work done here in our office. We have work instructions and QC procedures all relate back to ultrasound and the repair. And there's many companies out there that just have to check with their supplier, and that then now stamps it as quality. So having those actual activities in our building be part of that process is one step up.
Well, that's how we control quality, is that we keep everything in-house. We want to make sure that we can manage every single step of that repair process, whether it's a customer asset repairing or an asset of our own that we got as a defective core. We want to make sure that we can control that quality. But just as important with 1345 is that it drives continual improvement.
Oh, yes. I believe that's actually part of one of the standards you're way to, is how you even continue to improve across your processes.
Absolutely.
If you show no changes over the period of a couple audits, what are you doing? Because there's always going to be failures. There's always going to be age-based kind of failures, components that maybe overheat, or in the case of things like solder, it just needs to be reworked. So what are your processes and involvement around that?
And then the documentation that's required here is also a requirement of the FDA. So that's another great way of better understanding a supplier's capability, is just asking for the quality control documentation or some records of repair, because if you are actually doing the repairs of these medical devices, you're supposed to track all of the activities and retain them for a pretty long duration of time. That's actually a requirement. And if a supplier can't give those to you, it's pretty clear that they're not performing what they're claiming they can do for you. That's a great way to check.
Just a file cabinet in the back room somewhere. Now, a good searchable process means they'd be able to reproduce it quickly. Not only that, but training plays a huge part in it as well. The individual technicians in the building should all be aware of the process, top and bottom. They should be able to speak to your ISO process just as much as your CEO or your CFO. and be able to, kind of embrace it and live it.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
in reality, if it's designed properly for the organization
Mhm.
and executed with great discipline, the way that the
Mhm.
original QMS has been designed to these standards,
Yep.
it improved us. There was no question. It was
Mhm.
just, it allows for a level of clarity within the organization of
Mhm.
these are the standards,
Mhm.
and this is what we need to improve. And with this continual improvement and
Mhm.
customer feedback system that we have in place, it
Mhm.
allows us to properly identify um, the points of improvement,
Mhm.
and then those points of improvement the customers absolutely feel through our support and our quality of our products.
Yeah, yeah, and another thing, you can even go even more granular on the training of the technicians with the organization you're working with, is ask for certifications they might have that go along with their QMS.
Hmm.
Things like we have the IPC certification, or the Protocol of Connections, I believe is what
Hmm.
it's for, and it just shows that all of our technicians go through the basis of how to solder properly.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
proper training
yeah,
too.
yeah.
What healthcare facilities want to avoid is having improperly trained technicians
Hmm.
performing the repairs on the medical devices that you're procuring or getting repaired at your ultrasound supplier. And
Hmm.
IPC is a very you know standard for
Hmm.
soldering and their techniques and their uses that every single technician at our organization, Summit Imaging,
Yep.
is required to go through if they're going to be
Hmm.
repairing any medical equipment.
Hmm.
Because how can you have improvement when everybody's doing things differently and not doing things to a standard?
Yeah.
Right? It's nearly impossible. So when the training is
Hmm.
really cohesive, very thorough, it allows for a great platform to, when you do identify an opportunity for improvement,
Yep.
that improvement is actually propagated throughout the entire organization.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and that has a big weight. Playing in with the risk management across the organization. Everyone, kind of shares the responsibility, and then we can pass our responsibility on to our customers. The hospitals know that we are, taking on that responsibility and ensuring that we deliver a good product.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Risk management's extraordinarily
Mhm.
beneficial. We've adopted that portion, which was an optional piece of
Mhm.
1345 in the 2003 certification. The new
Mhm.
ISO 1345 2016
So
version
yeah,
that's
yeah,
coming out
yeah,
actually requires this. So we've
yeah,
been running with that since day one, because we
yeah,
thought, we actually asked our customers, what do you think? And they said, absolutely.
yeah,
Risk mitigation is such a huge part of healthcare facilities focus right now.
exactly. Yeah.
Kind of the reason why they're asking us to do this kind
Mhm.
of webinar, this kind of presentation, to get the awareness out there, is that
Mhm.
this is just a really frictionless way to get to their objective of actually lowering the total cost of ownership, and that
Yeah,
liability risk is a big part of it.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
Another way is a good old site visit, right?
Yeah, nothing beats it. Like I said, you should be able to talk to everyone in the building and hear the same answer of their QMS system. So how are you going to do that? You got to knock on the door, right?
Yeah, this is,
And
you got to go old school,
mhm,
get on an airplane, and then,
mhm,
for those suppliers that
yeah,
are working on, critical imaging equipment like this for you
mhm,
that have risk, we
mhm,
just find that it's super beneficial that you visit the supplier, and kind of rolling into that last point is validating all the
mhm,
claims, right? So you can validate through documentation, through identifying procedures, looking at scope of QMS, ensuring they have a QMS, looking us up on
mhm.
these ISO certification boards, to ensuring that there is actually an ISO certificate,
Yeah,
to validate the claims, because
mhm,
there's a lot of claims that are made, but the claims need to be validated, because
yeah,
there's, we're seeing just kind of this, moving from supplier to supplier because of, the expectation that was
yeah,
set forth up front
yeah,
wasn't met, and you could curtail a lot of those risks and
mhm,
those growing pains that you guys have on trying to find the right supplier by actually
mhm,
validating all these things up front. And it is absolutely possible
yep,
by just, a site visit, looking at the ISO QMS, looking at quality control
mhm,
documentation, in addition to
some referrals even.
References are really critical.
Yeah.
And just really doing the due diligence, because this is such a critical part of lowering total cost of ownership and getting the reliable and safe repairs that you need to be able to take care of your patients.
Yeah. Right.
And so this is just really kind of our healthcare facility customers' version of total cost of ownership, and I'm sure that we're going to be able to extrapolate more from this basic formula and probably detail more. Obviously, today we're had a finite amount of time, but I think the coverage so far has been pretty thorough, and hopefully for the audience out there has us thinking in a way that really is more of a mid to long term game for healthcare facilities, rather than just kind of that short term and that price first and then kind of disregard anything beyond the 3-month life of the poor quality part.
Yeah, we're kind of cursed by solve the problem now and we'll worry about the consequences later with the healthcare industry, and that is because it's so critical. Patient care, especially this day and age, it's all about time and how quickly can someone get helped. But the downside is it's turning into a quality problem in the long run too.
And I think the resounding message here is quality. Quality is actually, in the long term, the lowest total cost of ownership, and is actually the best patient care. Yeah. So with those two things being directly correlated, I just don't think healthcare facilities can lose by looking for quality suppliers.
No, not at all. It's just going to help the whole industry grow and get stronger in the long run too.
Absolutely agree.
Well, I think we're going to move on to some Q&A.
Yes.
So I believe we had some questions come from the MD folks, but in the meantime, I think we had some more resources on YouTube that are going to be coming out more and more. And we have our emails here that you can contact us anytime. Kyle at mysummitimaging.com.
Larry at mysummitimaging.com. Please follow us on LinkedIn and like us on Facebook. And we'd love to open up the floor for some questions.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. I've got a couple of questions here. How does Summit Imaging repair medical devices without using remanufactured parts of critical components?
Hi, this is Larry Nguyen here, CEO of Summit. First of all, thank you everybody for attending the webinar. But the strategy that Summit employs to repair medical devices without using remanufactured components such as critical components such as remanufactured crystals and remanufactured line sets that all really generate and receive signals for the ultrasound system to ingest and make an image, is that we are constantly scraping the globe for disposition ultrasound equipment, and we are able to salvage crystals and cables and lines and whatever have you from probes that have failures that aren't with those particular components. And so we're able to recycle the components of donor probes that are OEM components that have already passed FDA regulations with 510Ks to provide a repair to our customers that is safe and it's reliable. And from what our customers are reporting back to us, a renewed longevity of life in the equipment that extends mean time between failure, that maximizes that equipment uptime.
Okay, I've got time for about one more. How important is it for procurement to be aware of these issues?
Absolutely critical. With all the merger and acquisition activity in the healthcare space now at the hospital and the patient care level, that we are seeing a massive transition of responsibility of acquiring and procuring, not only just capital equipment, but in this particular context, replacement parts, replacement transducers, replacement mammography digital plates, and what have you, is being centralized and in becoming a shared service. And so now those procurement administrators and procurement specialists and those with deep domain expertise in that discipline is becoming absolutely critical to be able to sift through the suppliers and the vendors that are providing products
where you're really comparing apples to apples, but in addition, understanding the consequences and the risk to mitigate risk for the healthcare facilities, and especially mitigate risk for patient care. So when we're talking about these technical issues, absolutely HTM is really our audience. But you are absolutely correct that procurement is now, we're seeing that transition of kind of getting that technical experience and knowledge around quality of product and validity of product. It is absolutely critical to mitigate risk for patients.
That's great. Now, time has run away with this. So thank you, Carl and Larry, for a great and informative webinar. And thank you again to today's sponsors, Summit Imaging. One lucky attendee will win an Amazon gift card for completing the post-webinar survey, details of which will appear on your screen shortly. You must complete the survey to obtain your certificate of attendance. For more information about our upcoming webinars, please visit our website, webinarwednesday.live. And thanks once again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day and hope to see you next week.